All right, so I'm going to go over the cold read. My homeroom, my face-to-face students, they also took the cold read. A lot of them did pretty poorly, and so I went over it with them. They're going to take it again. And so I'm going to do the same thing for you. So we have our cold read. We're supposed to read chapter 7 of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe and then complete this assignment. And I have, I'm going to go ahead and pull up the actual page that you have. You have, let's see, right here. You had the Word document. Okay. And so you were supposed to look at this and then answer the questions in the Google form. All right, so the following questions should be answered after reading Chapter 7 of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Hopefully you actually read Chapter 7 or watched the video and followed along. And then they're going to give you selections, and they want you to answer the questions. You're going to have to look at the context of what's happening in the story, and that's going to help you. So they give you an excerpt from Chapter 7 in question 1. If it comes to talking about sides, said Edmund, how do we know you're a friend? Not mean to be rude, Mr. Beaver, added Peter, but you see, we're strangers. Quite right, said the Beaver. Here is my token, and they underlined token for us. With these words, it held up to them a little white object. They all looked at it in surprise, till suddenly Lucy said, Oh, of course, it's my handkerchief, the one I gave to poor Mr. Tumnus. All right, so, apologize. So, what is the meaning of the word token as is used in this excerpt? So I go up and I see, okay, he shows her the token. Now, do they mean literally, because the token, what was the token literally? It was a handkerchief. But that's not what they're asking. They're asking, what's the purpose of this token? Why is Mr. Beaver showing Lucy and the rest of the siblings this token? Why is he showing them the handkerchief? It's because of C. It's to give something it's something given as an assurance of identity. He's showing that he's met Mr. Tumnus, that he's on Mr. Tumnus's side, and since Lucy trusts Mr. Tumnus, that he can be trusted as well. All right, part B. Which context clue in the paragraph best helps in understanding the meaning of the word token? Okay, so why is he holding it up there? It would be A, because they ask, how do we know you're a friend? And so he's like, okay, I'm going to show you how you can know that I'm a friend. All right, question 2. Just below them, a dam had been built across the river, and when they saw it, everyone suddenly remembered that, of course, beavers are always making dams, and felt quite sure that Mr. Beaver had made this one. They also noticed that he now had a sort of modest expression on his face, the sort of look people have when you are visiting a garden they've made or reading a story they've written. So it was only common politeness when Susan said, What a lovely dam. And Mr. Beaver didn't say, Hush, this time, but merely a trifle, and it really isn't really finished. Which statement best expresses the meaning of the phrase merely a trifle as it is used by the beaver in the paragraph? So they're asking you not what is a trifle, what does the phrase merely a trifle mean? They're not asking you that. They want to know, what does it mean when the beaver says it? What is he saying? Because the idea is that it's obviously something he's made. So what is he saying when he says that? Is he A, telling the children that the dam isn't finished, so they should be careful? Is he telling the children that he's proud of the dam and all the work he's done? Is he telling the children that the dam is just ordinary because he's very humble? Or is he telling the children that he is not happy with how the dam was built? Okay, he's telling the children that the dam is ordinary because he's humble. Mr. Beaver's a humble person. He's not a proud man. He tries to be. He's a good character. I mean, he's a beaver, but think of him if he was a human. He's a good man. He works hard. He's just a humble person. He's not proud. All right, and proud means in this case, I understand sometimes it's a language issue. Proud not as in feeling good, but proud as in arrogance. He's not an arrogant man. All right, part B. Which context clue in the paragraph best helps in understanding the meaning of the phrase merely a trifle? Is it where he says it isn't really finished, where we see Mr. Beaver had made this one? Is it what a lovely dam? That's Susan speaking. So any of these cases where you see these quotations, someone's speaking. So if you think that it's, I'm sorry, some of these cases, someone's speaking, look and see, is it the narrator, is it a character, what's being said? All right, so D says modest expression on his face. Well, you have to know modest expression. What does that mean? Modest means not proud, not arrogant, someone who's humble. And so you have to be able to understand that modest and humble go together. And I know that a lot of years that I've taught this, students really struggle because they don't know the meaning of some of these basic words. And that's one of the reasons it's important for you to be reading along when we do the book, but it's also important for you to be reading books on your own and growing your level of knowledge. I push my students in face-to-face instruction to do this. They have books that they're reading on their own. I can't do so much for virtual because it's really responsibility that's placed upon you. But it's only learning vocabulary and knowing what these terms mean really is going to depend a lot more on you than I would like it to. But since we've chosen virtual as an option that you're going to take, unless you come face to face, that's one of those things you're just going to have to make sure that you're paying attention, that you're pushing yourself with your reading because vocabulary is essential. Okay, so now we're going to go to question 3. Which statement best describes Edmund and Peter's response to the beaver when they first meet him? A, both Peter and Edmund are reluctant to trust Beaver because the children do not know him. B, both Peter and Edmund are reluctant to trust Beaver because Beaver seems very wild. C, Peter is reluctant to trust the Beaver, but Edmund trusts Beaver because he knows Beaver is on their side. Or D, Peter trusts Beaver because he offers him food and drink, but Edmund is reluctant to trust him. Okay, the first thing you should do is you should go back to the text and read that scene. And if you did that, you would know the answer is A. Both Peter and Edmund are reluctant to trust Beaver because the children do not know him. That's the reason. All right, now they want you to find 3 letters of evidence. I think on the actual test that you submitted, you did a check mark. Is how we set that up. Okay, so 3 pieces of evidence that would prove that. Okay, would it be where it wants us to go to it, said Susan, and it's warning us not to make a noise? Would that show not trusting him? Of course not. B, if it comes to talking about sides, said Edmund, how do we know you're a friend? That would do it because that shows they're not trusting. Who are you afraid of, said Peter. There's no one here but ourselves. Well, that doesn't make any sense in the context. Come on, said Peter, let's give it a try. I'll keep close together. We ought to be a match for one beaver if it turns out to be an enemy. That would show some mistrust. Shan't we have to risk it, said Susan. Okay, so that's talking about trusting the beaver, but that's Susan. So obviously Susan would not play into why Edmund and Peter don't trust the beaver. Not meaning to be rude, Mr. Beaver, added Peter, but you see, we're strangers. Okay, so that would be the one. So notice Peter speaking here, and Edmund speaking here. Now, if I look at C, I can tell that doesn't make sense because they don't know the beaver's there yet. But the rest of this should be kind of self-explanatory. All right, so I'm gonna continue doing it through the Google form. Read the following excerpt from chapter 7. I know what it is, said Peter. It's a beaver. I saw the tail. It wants us to go to it, said Susan. And it's warning us not to make a noise. I know, said Peter. The question is, are we to go to it or not? What do you think, Lou? I think it's a nice beaver, said Lucy. Yes, but how do we know, said Edmund. Shan't we have to risk it, said Susan. I mean, it's no good just standing here, and I feel I want some dinner. How are the characters Lucy and Edmund different? Okay, so Susan and Peter are speaking, but you should totally ignore that. What you should look for is, what does Lucy say and do? What does Edmund say and do? Okay, so Edmund, what is he? Is he angry? Is he scared? Is he tired? Is he suspicious and negative? It's D, he's suspicious and negative. All right, so now we go down. Part B, which evidence from the excerpt best supports the answer to part A? Well, we're looking to show that Edmund is suspicious and negative and that Lucy is trusting. Where do we see that? Well, we only have one instance where we see both Lucy and Edmund. And Lucy says, I think it's a nice beaver. It shows she's nice and trusting. Yes, but how do we know, said Edmund? That shows he's suspicious. Okay, so now we have another excerpt. That's right, said the beaver. Poor fellow, he got wind of the arrest before it actually happened and handed this over to me. He said that if anything happened to him, I must meet you here and take you on to. Here the beaver's voice sank into silence, and it gave one or two very mysterious nods. Then signaling to the children to stand as close around it as they possibly could so that their faces were actually tickled by its whiskers, it added in a low whisper, They say Aslan is on the move, perhaps has already landed. Which sentence best explains how these paragraphs fit into the overall structure of chapter 7? Okay, so what's going on with chapter 7 here? Is it establishing the seriousness of Beaver's plans for making the trip to the dam? That makes no sense. They establish the importance of Beaver's introduction of Aslan. That might be something. It establishes the seriousness of the idea that the children are lost. We've already covered that. It establishes the importance of Beaver's token that Tumnus gave him. Okay, so only two of these are important. Hopefully we could eliminate C and A, but we between B and D. So what are we going to do? If I go up and I look, I look at what's happening in the context here. Okay, so is this mostly about Tumnus or is it about Aslan? What's the context? It's mostly about Aslan, so the answer is going to be B. I know sometimes I kind of rush in giving the answer, but it's kind of difficult because I don't have students here to participate. All right, part B. What evidence from the passage best supports the answer to part A? Okay, we're looking at the idea of Beaver's introduction of Aslan. Okay, so I can immediately see that A would not be a good option. I can see that B would not be a good option. C might be because it's actually mentioning Aslan. And D would only be a good option had I chosen the importance of Beaver's token. But because we chose Aslan, the introduction of Aslan, we're going to go with C, and that would be the correct answer. All right, read these sentences from chapter 7. Shh, said the beaver. Not here. I must bring you where we can have a real talk and also dinner. Which sentence best explains how the beaver's mention of dinner influences how the events are described in chapter 7? Okay, so does the mood change from a fear of meeting with the beaver to amusement of the beaver's behavior? Does the mood change from fear of meeting with the beaver to lighthearted thoughts of dinner? Does the mood change from the calmness of the discussion of Aslan to the amusement of Beaver's humor? Does the mood of the group change from the mysteriousness of the discussion of Aslan to hopeful thoughts of dinner? And it would be D, because it's mysterious. Remember, we keep noticing that the children feel a certain mysterious feeling. All right, question 7. Part A, how is Edmund's reaction to seeing the beaver's dam different from the other members of the group? Okay, so Edmund's reaction, how is it different? And if you didn't remember, go back to the text and see, okay, when this scene happens, what is Edmund thinking or doing? And then it should be very easy to figure out. Okay, he's thinking about the witch, right? So only one of these would apply. It would be C. All right, they want you to choose 2 pieces of evidence. But also, look, Edmund is thinking about the witch, but what are the others thinking about? The beauty of the palace. Sorry, the beauty of the place. Okay, so now we go to part B, and they want 2 pieces of evidence. Edmund is easy. Most people get that one right. A lot of people struggle, though, however, with the second part. With the others are amazed at the beauty of the place. Okay, some choose E because it describes the house that the beavers live in, but it doesn't necessarily show it as beautiful, and it doesn't describe it even as elegant or as something pleasant. It just describes it. But C would be the answer. And if you want to know why C would be the answer, it'd be because of this word right here. They're looking down on a fine sight. The idea is it's something beautiful, it's something pretty, it's something nice to look at. Okay, so that was a quick going over this because it's just me. I can't really interact so well with you, but think about what you did right, what you did wrong, and I'm going to probably give this test again within the next week or so. Please make sure that you are paying attention. Please make sure that you're going back to the text. I can't force you to do this, but That's the only way to succeed with these kinds of quizzes, because it's designed to make you go back and see, okay, what's happening in the story in this scene. All right, I hope you have a good day.